It was supposed to be a simple hunting trip, just the three of us, Tom, Richard, and me. We'd grown up together, inseparable since our first days at Jefferson Elementary in the small town of Oak Ridge, Washington. Hunting was our way to unwind and connect, a tradition we'd shared for years. We planned a weekend excursion, driving up to the Cascade Mountains where the trees reached for the sky and the rivers ran cold and fast. We set out early on a Saturday morning, our rifles in tow, ready for a day of hunting deer. The smell of dew-covered pine needles filled the air, and the sun began to cast its golden glow across the forest floor. We were a well-coordinated team, each of us knowing our roles and trusting the others to have our backs. As the day wore on, we found ourselves deeper in the woods than we'd ever been before. The deer tracks we'd followed had led us to an unfamiliar part of the forest. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the shadows lengthened, signaling the end of our hunt. We realized that Richard was no longer with us. Panicked, we called his name, our voices echoing off the ancient trees. The only response was the chilling silence of the woods. We searched for hours, our flashlights casting eerie beams through the darkness, but found no sign of our friend. Exhausted, we returned to Oak Ridge, our hearts heavy with guilt and fear. The entire town searched for Richard over the following weeks, but no trace of him was ever found. Life went on, and we were left to pick up the pieces of our shattered friendship. Tom and I tried to continue the hunting tradition, but it was never the same without Richard. Eventually, we drifted apart, each moving to different cities and starting our own families. A decade later, the news broke that a hiker had discovered human bones in the Sierra Nevada, over 500 miles from where Richard had vanished. Forensic analysis revealed that they belonged to our lost friend, but the mystery only deepened. The remains of 20 other men were found nearby, their ages spanning a wide range, and all had disappeared without a trace. The authorities were baffled, and the case was never solved. The media dubbed the area the Bone Field, and sensational stories of a serial killer or cryptid creature emerged. Investigators combed the site for clues, but nothing could explain the presence of so many lost souls in one remote location. A pall of fear and unease descended upon Oak Ridge and the surrounding communities, and the memory of our carefree youth was forever tainted by this gruesome discovery. Driven by the need to understand what had happened to our friend, Tom and I decided to retrace our steps from that fateful hunting trip. We returned to the Cascade Mountains, accompanied by the weight of unresolved grief and unanswered questions. The familiar scent of pine needles and the sight of the towering trees brought back memories we'd long tried to suppress. We wandered the woods, searching for anything that might offer a clue to the mystery. As we moved deeper into the forest, we discovered a hidden path, overgrown and barely visible. Curiosity drew us in, and we followed the trail until we reached a small clearing. In the center stood a weathered stone monument, inscribed with strange symbols that seemed ancient and otherworldly. The monument's presence was inexplicable, and a chill ran down my spine as we approached it. In that moment, we heard a distant howl echo through the forest, and a flock of startled birds took flight above us. We exchanged uneasy glances, the horror of Richard's disappearance flooding back, leaving us raw and exposed. We never solved the mystery of the Bone Field or the strange monument, but the experience bound Tom and me together once more. We dedicated ourselves to researching the history of the area and seeking answers to the questions that haunted us. We pored over ancient texts, interviewed locals, and consulted with experts, but the truth remained elusive. Our quest became an obsession, driving us to the fringes of society, where whispered rumors of supernatural forces and dark rituals persisted. We spent countless nights in the forest, seeking any sign of the entity that might have taken Richard and the others. The woods became our second home, a place of fear and fascination that we could not escape. As the years passed, Tom and I grew older, our once vibrant youth a distant memory. We became known as the Bonefield Hunters, our relentless pursuit of the truth earning us a mix of respect and pity from our peers. We could not let go of the past, and our lives were defined by the unsolved mystery that had taken our friend. In time, Tom fell ill, his body weakened by age and the toll of our endless search. On his deathbed, he made me promise to continue our quest, to never give up until the truth was uncovered. I agreed, tears streaming down my face as I said goodbye to my oldest friend. Alone now, I continue to search for answers, the weight of the Bone Field and the lives lost there pressing down upon me. The monument in the woods remains a silent witness to the horrors that transpired, its secrets locked away, as impenetrable as the darkness that surrounds it. My twilight years approach, and I am haunted by the knowledge that I may never uncover the truth behind the bone field. But I will not give up. For Richard, for Tom, and for the countless others who have been lost to the shadows, I will continue to seek the light. The mysteries of the forest are vast and terrifying, but I will not be deterred. I will fight on, driven by the memory of my friends and the need to bring closure to the nightmare that began all those years ago. I'm here to share a story, one that I've kept with me for years. And I need to emphasize that this is 100% true. It's about something that happened during my childhood, which still sends chills down my spine when I think about it. Back when I was a child, there was a legend in our neighborhood that had every kid on edge: the Blue Woman. Every kid had a different version of the story, but they all shared the same spine-chilling element. The Blue Woman would kidnap children. In some tales, she was an old woman living in a dilapidated house nearby. In others, she was a magical woman with wings who resided in the heart of the forest. The descriptions varied, but the result was always the same. Children would disappear, and the Blue Woman would be the one to blame. My friends and I would whisper these stories to each other, our hearts pounding with fear and excitement. We never really believed in the Blue Woman, but we couldn't resist the thrill of scaring ourselves. We were just kids, after all. But then one day everything changed. My best friend Tommy went missing. We had been playing hide-and-seek in the neighborhood that afternoon. As dusk fell, we realized that Tommy hadn't been found yet. We searched for him high and low, but there was no sign of him. Panic set in as we alerted our parents, who in turn called the police. An extensive search was conducted, but Tommy was never found. The unsolved disappearance of my friend shook our community to the core. Hushed whispers circulated among the adults, and we kids were more frightened than ever. We couldn't shake the feeling that the Blue Woman had taken Tommy. Years passed, and the memory of Tommy's disappearance never left me. I moved away for college and eventually started a family of my own. But deep down, I always knew that I needed to uncover the truth about what happened to Tommy, and if the Blue Woman was real. So I returned to my hometown, determined to investigate the legend of the Blue Woman. I started by visiting the local library, digging through old newspaper clippings and town records. To my surprise, I discovered that the legend of the Blue Woman predated my childhood by decades. The stories went back as far as the 1950s, with accounts of missing children and a mysterious blue figure. With a growing sense of dread, I visited the locations from the various tales: the old house, the forest, and other rumored hiding spots of the Blue Woman. At each site, I found evidence that seemed to corroborate the legend. In the abandoned house, I discovered a hidden room with walls covered in faded newspaper clippings about missing children. In the forest, I found a small, decrepit shack containing a collection of old, broken toys. Finally, I decided to confront the Blue Woman herself, if she even existed. Armed with courage and a flashlight, I ventured into the woods at night, following whispered rumors of her current dwelling. My search led me to a clearing where I discovered a small, rundown cabin. As I cautiously approached, my flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. To my utter shock, the door creaked open, revealing the figure of a woman bathed in a pale blue light. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, I realized the stories were true. The Blue Woman was real. She didn't try to harm me, nor did she try to explain herself. Instead, she just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Filled with terror and a strange sadness, I turned and ran back through the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my car, gasping for breath and trembling with fear. I reported my findings to the local police, who initially dismissed my story as a delusion or prank, but when they investigated the locations I had visited, they found the same unsettling evidence I had: the hidden room in the old house, the shack in the forest, and the cabin where I had encountered the Blue Woman herself. An investigation was launched, and while they never found the Blue Woman, they did uncover a chilling pattern of unsolved child disappearances stretching back decades. Though the authorities never officially linked these cases to the Blue Woman, the people in my hometown knew the truth. The cabin in the woods was demolished, and the old house was torn down, as if removing the physical traces of the Blue Woman would somehow banish her from our lives. But the memory of Tommy and the other children who were lost remains etched in our hearts. Now, as a parent myself, I feel an obligation to share this story, to warn others of the dangers that lurk in the shadows and the unsettling truth of the Blue Woman. She may be gone, but the consequences of her actions will haunt our community forever. Remember, this is a 100% true story. The blue woman may have vanished, but the mystery she left behind is a chilling reminder that the world is not always as it seems. The hospital where I worked was nestled on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by old trees that towered above the aging building. As a young nurse, I was eager to prove myself and help those in need. I quickly became a familiar face on the wards, making my rounds and attending to the patients. The hospital, however, had a peculiar reputation. Hushed whispers spoke of strange occurrences, haunted hallways, and shadowy figures seen in the night. But in my daily tasks, I focused on my patients, dismissing the chilling stories as mere gossip. Among the patients, there was one old man who I grew particularly fond of. His name was Mr. Whitmore, and he had been admitted for a lingering illness. He was a frail figure, with thinning white hair and a gaze that held the weight of countless memories. Despite his fragile state, he had a sharp wit and would often share stories of his life with me during our conversations. Over time, I began to look forward to our brief encounters, finding solace in his wisdom and comforting presence. One evening, as I made my way down the dimly lit corridor toward Mr. Whitmore's room, I noticed an unsettling silence. The door to his room was slightly ajar, and the faint glow of the bedside lamp illuminated an empty bed. I felt a knot in my stomach, as if something was terribly amiss. I asked the other nurses if they had seen Mr. Whitmore, but their faces were blank and they claimed not to know who I was talking about. Confused and increasingly alarmed, I searched the hospital, hoping to find some trace of my elderly friend, but each query was met with puzzled looks and dismissive shrugs. It was as if Mr. Whitmore had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. I questioned the staff, reviewed patient records, and even checked the morgue, but there was no sign of him. It was as though he had never existed. My frustration grew as I realized that no one else seemed to remember Mr. Whitmore, and my determination to uncover the truth intensified. I became consumed by the mystery, poring over old documents and combing through the hospital's dusty archives. The other nurses began to avoid me, whispering about my obsession with a man who, as far as they were concerned, was nothing more than a figment of my imagination. Despite my relentless efforts, I found no evidence of Mr. Whitmore's existence. The hospital's secrets remained hidden and the strange rumors persisted. I could no longer ignore the eerie atmosphere that seemed to suffocate the wards, nor the unsettling feeling that I was being watched by unseen eyes. My once friendly colleagues now regarded me with suspicion, and I knew that I could not stay in this place any longer. With a heavy heart, I packed my belongings and left the hospital for the last time. I moved to a distant city, determined to start anew and put the haunting memories behind me. But the enigma of Mr. Whitmore lingered in my thoughts, a ghostly reminder of the unsolved mystery that continued to haunt the corridors of the hospital. As the years passed, I would occasionally revisit the strange events that had unfolded during my time at the hospital, searching for answers that I knew I would never find. The unsettling rumors, the inexplicable disappearance of Mr. Whitmore, and the hospital's eerie atmosphere had left an indelible mark on my soul. Though I had left the town and its strange hospital behind, the unanswered questions remained, forever shrouded in the darkness of the unknown. If these tales captivated your imagination, kindly grace the like, subscribe, and bell icons with a click. We replenish our story trove twice a day to keep you enthralled. Your presence has been truly appreciated. Thank you for lending us your ears, and we'll see you here again next time, where the shadows whisper and nightmares beckons.